Welcome back to the Veteran Teacher Files. I'm your host, the Dragon Lady. And if you're new here, buckle up, because I try not to sugarcoat anything on this show. So, the other day, I was sitting across from my friend, let's call her Grizzly Mama, and she was venting. Now, Grizzly Mama has been in education since 1996. She is an RSP teacher, a resource specialist. And when we worked together, she was the kind of colleague who made you better by just being around her. I respected her then, and I respect her now. And when Grizzly Mama is frustrated, she also gets a little animated. So, I also had the pleasure, and bless her heart, of being the teacher to one of her sons. And that boy was a handful. A whole armful, actually. But I'm glad to hear that he's doing well. He's headed off to a 4-year university, so clearly something worked. And it was probably her. Definitely not me, his middle school teacher. But anyway, we were sitting there catching up, and she starts telling me about what's going on at her school. Thus, the frustration. Now, for some context, Grizzly Mama works at a high-performing school in a high-performing district. We're talking green and blue all across the dashboard. The good colors. These people are getting it done. So when you're already doing well, what do you tackle next? They've addressed absenteeism, because you can only do so much there. And suspension rates are already pretty low. This is a pretty high-performing neighborhood, area, district, school. So, yeah, what's next? What's the next frontier? Well, I think the next frontier here must be, or might be, special education. Specifically, mainstreaming, inclusion, push-in support. Now, for those of you who don't know the difference, pull out is when an RSP teacher takes a student out of the general ed classroom to work with them in a smaller, more focused setting. And push-in is when the RSP teacher comes into the general ed classroom to support the student there. Sounds great on paper, very progressive, very inclusive. And here's what Grizzly Mama explained to me that I had genuinely never thought about before. When you push in, depending on the student, a few things can happen. 1, you can be battling the environment. The general ed classroom is loud, stimulating, fast-moving. For some students, that is the exact opposite of what they need to actually learn. 2, the student can actually shut down, because now they're embarrassed. Now everyone can see that they need extra help. The support that was supposed to help them has just put a spotlight on them in front of their peers. And 3, and this is the one that stuck with me, an RSP teacher who doesn't care could very easily just hang back, fade into the wallpaper, just become a glorified aide. Now, Grizzly Mama is not that person. She cares deeply, and she's going to show up regardless. But she's being dropped into a structure that would make it very easy for someone who didn't care to coast, to collect a paycheck and do nothing. And that is a problem, because not every RSP teacher is a Grizzly Mama. Someone with years of specialized training, a credential, real expertise in learning differences. The system is creating conditions where all of that can be completely wasted, where push-in becomes less about student support and more about what that looks like on paper or a district report. Now, if you've been listening for a couple of episodes, you might have heard me talk about a teacher who was offered a month off. Well, she's making a return. We're going to call her Purple Hair. And in a previous episode, I mentioned that this teacher was offered a month off for mental health by March of the school year. And if you haven't heard that episode, go back and listen. It's a whole thing. But what I didn't fully get into at that time was why she was at that breaking point. See, Purple Hair is a fabulous general education teacher, not special ed, just a regular classroom just a teacher doing her job. And she had a student, fully mainstreamed, 100% of her class, who is autistic. This student had a one-on-one aide with him all day long. All the behavior supports, all the boxes were checked. Every accommodation was in place. This woman rearranged her whole classroom. She was very intentional and thoughtful the whole year. And this woman nearly had a nervous breakdown by March. Let that sink in. Decades of experience, wonderful teacher, all the supports were in place. On paper, the system did everything right. And a dedicated, caring teacher was still being grounded down to nothing. Because there is a difference between having supports and those supports that actually work. And when they're not working, who absorbs the cost? The teacher in the room. Every single day. So, as I'm sitting with Grizzly Mama, I mentioned to her another friend of mine, because I know a ton of teachers. And I'm going to call her Skonka, because that's my nickname for her. And if she's listening, I love you, Skonka. Please don't come after me. So, Skonka and I go way back. We worked together at a charter school. And Skonka's sharp. She is intelligent. She is smart. She is well-spoken, ambition. And when I left the charter school where we were both working at, she got promoted. And then I think she got promoted again. And she climbed all the way up to chief academic officer. Meanwhile, I was out there in the trenches. So yeah, different paths. And a few months ago, Skonka came to visit me. Life had changed for both of us, and she's a mom. She has 3 beautiful kids, and she had made the decision to step away from administration and return to the classroom so that she could have more time with her family. Respect. So I asked her when she came to visit a few months back, how's it going? How's your return to the classroom? And she broke down in tears. Now I want you to understand what I said next. And I want you to understand what I said because I said it with love. Because I genuinely love Skonka. I mean, I love this woman. I wish I was like the 5th sister to her family. But anyways, I looked at her and I said, yeah, all those years you were up there making decisions about mainstreaming kids without actually knowing what you were doing. Okay, now maybe I was PMSing. Maybe I was just finally done being polite about it. Either way, I said it. Because here's the thing about Skonka. Oh man, please don't hate me, girl. But in my opinion, this is just my opinion, she skipped out at the top of her game. She was 5 years into the same grade at the same school. And she got promoted because she's good. Because she's smart. Because she presents well. Because she's the complete package. And then she was put in charge of making decisions about things like mainstreaming students. From a conference room with a curriculum binder, without ever having sat in a classroom where decisions land. And now, she's back in the classroom. Different school, but she's working with students she knows don't belong there, with needs that aren't being met, causing disruptions, causing gaps, and causing her to cry. Here's where I have to be fair, because this story isn't about villains. Skonka is not a bad person. She's not a villain. She's not a bad guy. She believes in inclusion. She believes in the least restrictive learning environment. She believes everyone can learn. You know what? I believe that stuff too. She's right. Those are good beliefs. The least restrictive environment is literally the law. It's in IDEA. IDEA stands for Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And it's in there. It says the least restrictive environment is part of IDEA. Inclusion has real value. I'm not up here saying let's go back to the days where we just warehoused kids and call it a day. But there is a gap, a massive, exhausting, teacher-breaking gap. between the philosophy of inclusion and the execution of it. And that's what Grizzly Mama was talking about. That's why Purple Hair is having a breakdown by March. And that gap is where Skonka sat across from me in tears, finally understanding from the inside what those decisions she made from the top actually feel like on the ground. So here's what I keep coming back to, and what Grizzly Mama kept asking. Why are IEP teams so afraid to say no? Why are teams sitting in front of parents and parent advocates just agreeing, signing off on placements that teachers know aren't right, that RSP specialists know aren't right? I think part of the answer is this. Saying no to full inclusion feels like you're saying not everyone can learn. And nobody wants to be that person. Nobody wants to be the educator who looks at a parent in the eye and says, your child cannot be in a general education classroom. And I think maybe that's why they say yes. I'm not sure. But the cost gets disrupted quietly to the RSP teacher, to the general education teacher, and to the student who's just sitting in an environment that actually doesn't serve them. The belief isn't the problem. The gap between the belief and the reality is the problem. And until the people making the decisions have to actually live in that gap, well, ask Gonka how it's going. Before I let you go, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been in a situation where you knew a student's placement wasn't right, but felt like you couldn't say anything? Maybe you were in that IEP meeting. Maybe you were that general education teacher absorbing the impact. Maybe you were the RSP teacher being pushed in when you knew pull-out was what that kid needed. What did you do? Did you speak up? Did you stay quiet? Did you regret it? Either way, drop your answer in the comments. I read everything, and your story might just become another episode. And listen, if this episode hit home for you, do me a favor. Follow the show, share the episode, send it to a colleague who needs to hear it. Send it to an administrator. Especially send it to an administrator. And yeah, the Veteran Teacher Files exist because these conversations need to happen. And the more of us who have them, the better. All right, that's the episode. I want to give a big thank you to Grizzly Mama for keeping it real with me over lunch. You've been doing this work for almost 30 years, and the fact that you can still care so much says everything. To Purple Hair, we see you. We've always seen you. And Skonka, I love you. You know I do. I hope you know I do. As always, if you're a teacher listening to this, I hope you feel a little less lonely today. And if you're an administrator listening to this, maybe go visit a classroom. Just a thought. I'm the Dragon Lady. This was the Veteran Teacher Files. Talk to you later.